right. Miigwech, thank you. Welcome for joining us today. I call the March 26, 2026 meeting of the Native American Commission to order. Let's begin with an introduction of current commission members, starting with, I'll start over on the left side here.
Amanda Strauss, Sisseton Wapiton, Oyate.
I'm Melissa Birkland. I'm the school board liaison.
I'm Emily Sargent. I'm from White Earth Nation.
Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Fry. I'm from the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians in Michigan's Upper Peninsula.
Ashley Littlewolf, member of Boys Fort Band of Ojibwe.
Nicole Crutchfield, Planning Department.
John Strand, City Commission.
Thank you for the introductions. And I think this is all NAC members we'll have today. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to approve today's agenda and minutes. And so can I get a motion to approve the agenda and minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, can I get a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, the next item is the discussion of our transition and action plan of the Native American Commission. We were able to put together, and it's in your packet. I just wanted to open up the floor to share any updates to this or to open up discussion, questions for comments. And we were hoping to have some community here with us, but I'll open it up for the floor for anybody that has any discussion on the action plan, since this was just approved at the last City Commission meeting.
I can open up some discussion looking at this action plan, and thankful that there's still this body will still be represented within the city of Fargo. And we touched upon this before we called the meeting to order, but being able to have the representation within the community. Looking at this and moving to this informal, volunteer-led body, I think we have the opportunity to take this more into the community as well and host some of these meetings or sessions in the evening where we can have a larger audience, which I know we're volunteer, we have things as well, but if we really want to get the community feedback, especially in the environment that we're in with housing, healthcare, this would be a great opportunity for us to be able to meet the people where they're at, so that we can get that feedback to be able to advise the city in the capacity that this body is meant to do. Over.
Yeah, I think the intent is all those things that you just said. Just to echo that, I think that are having more listening sessions and community sessions where we're able to be more in community and in different spaces to listen to concerns or feedback, or to have constructive conversations to look for solutions or areas for advocacy. I think that will be really natural as with this transition. And I'm really excited for this transition plan, and I've shared previously, but I am excited to strengthen partnerships more broadly, and to invite different membership to the Native American Commission, because we're a small group right now, and we've been appointed by the mayor of Fargo, but I think we could have a larger, diverse group of Native community members that are showing up to provide input and to help us operate as a volunteer body. I think that that's going to be a strength. And I know that we have some time before we figure out the next steps for transition from the city governance, but I wonder what everyone's thoughts are as NAC members, because we didn't specifically put in here like membership. What membership look like? Would it just be open to community? Is that something we want to wait to define until after transition happens, or?
And maybe if I can, Chair, explain for those who might be watching, and this is meant to be, kind of a dialogue to help share for community to maybe catch people up to where we landed over the last couple months. And would you mind sharing a little bit how this plan got created? And maybe you mentioned other community members that have been participating in this discussion leading into that. And then maybe I can provide a quick snapshot of, I have had an opportunity, our city attorney, Representative Nancy Morris is in the audience here, but have shared a little bit. We've started to brainstorm a little bit on what that next step looks like in transition from a paperwork component. And so I can highlight that too, but I'll maybe a little bit of what we're talking about here.
For sure, some context. So I think we began meeting quite a while ago to talk through next steps as NAC members. And so this plan began as discussion internally as NAC of what could a new governance structure model look like for us that would work, because we had heard from members, previous members, current members, some of the structures that exist within the city weren't supporting what we were trying to do. And not that the city wasn't being good partners in this, it was just being able to have more community input, being able to kind of advocate a little more strongly on different things. So we've been talking about this for quite some time, and so this draft is the final working draft that was reviewed by all NAC members and contributed by Emily. By all NAC members were able to review it. But then also we had past NAC members take a look at it and review it and see if it looked okay. There was different community members that had reached out as soon as they heard that NAC was potentially transitioning to a different model or to a different scope, which we're not really shifting scope, but they were interested in wanting to support NAC continuing. And so we had different folks review that as well. And this was all done pretty informally. We didn't host a big community listening session or anything, but we are hoping to do that once we transition. Officially, I'd hope that we could have some large community event, and also we're going to be looking at our 20-year anniversary in June, which would be a good time to have something like that. I think it might timeline-wise work out that could be a good time for us to do that. So it was just some members of the community who had reached out and expressed a strong interest in helping support NAC, helping to look through this and to help us draft a plan. And so it came together fairly quickly. Just so we were ready because we got notice in January that the City Commission was taking a look at the boards and commissions, and then we needed to have something ready before the March 5th City Commission meeting. And so we had 2 months to get some feedback, talk to previous members, current members, and put together this action plan. And it's very much a working document, but we wanted to make sure we kept the purpose of NAC consistent while looking at what are we hoping to grow and expand, and what are our goals, what will our new operating model look like. And so it wasn't a very broad community input, and I'm hoping that we can continue to invite community members to this table, maybe not in this setting if it doesn't work, but Dan had mentioned in the evening, having evening sessions where we can have, sitting around a table talking and seeing how we can take in feedback and maybe continue to have this plan be fluid as we move through the stages, because it's going to be growing and evolving and changing as we figure things out. And so that's kind of content of where we're at. And I think that's pretty much sums it up.
Oh, thank you. And maybe just to summarize what next steps might look like. So at City Commission a few weeks ago, this development plan was kind of, blessed or acknowledged. And so we've been working with our city attorney a little bit on what that looks like next. And so probably what you'll see coming forward is a resolution that has kind of some preamble information about the intentions from these development plans, like the city's participation, still having a city liaison, commissioner liaison, the kind of some of the elements related in this development plan memorialized in a resolution of some sort. So we're working on a draft of that right now, and that would go to city commission at a date that we work with you, Ashley, on, and that would kind of officialize the new plan and the next steps, as opposed to, right, today's meeting I would call a hybrid meeting, as we had the action from the city commission a few weeks ago, and we're transitioning, and we know there's going to be many more things happening, transitioning, and then we have that official resolution that it's more, I would say, legal paperwork or legal clarity to correct the city ordinances and things like that. So I know that's not really clear, but if you have any questions on that, I'm glad to.
So I have a few questions, if it's okay
Yeah.
to ask. I definitely think we could talk about membership and some ideas today for that, but I do have quite a bit of operational questions still I just wanted to clarify. And one of them being with that, so I think, my perspective would be to actually invite the community and advertise the community to come to a next Native American Commission, and that be like the focus of the meeting, to be able to have community give feedback of, like, what do they want this, what do they want this community-led commission to look like, or what do they want more of, what do they want less of? I think as long as there's no like rules against that, I think if we're here, we might as well invite people to come to give, since we're all here in one place. So I'm just curious, like, if that could happen, or if people would want that to happen, would it be better from an operational standpoint for that to happen after the resolution preamble document comes out and gets approved, or is that something we can do paralleling to when that's being created?
And this meeting was meant to be that meeting.
Oh, gotcha.
So we were trying to, like, it got, Catlin put together like a news release, like, and it was, we had like sent it out, I had sent it out to, different community members, organizations, but I don't know if the time doesn't work for people because.
Yeah. Are we able to do it again and then offer an evening one too? Like, can we do both?
I would, just to be honest, like, I would be open to it, but as we are sitting here, we have 4 NAC members, and we haven't had full membership show up to a few meetings, and it's been a lot of work on me as chair to kind of be trying to get everybody to the same space. So it would require all of us to try to figure out who's going to do what pieces of what. Because I think it's a great idea. I want to have community here with us, but as we're all wearing many hats, I think that's going to be a part of the growing of what does this look like, and who carries what piece of which task to be able to support our shared goal of getting community here. Because it's currently, we don't have a community that was able to show up today, and so that is, I want that input. We all want that input, but what does that look like, and how do we realistically do this? And this is a critical time for us. I think it's a huge opportunity that the City Commission unanimously was recognizing the work that went into creating a plan to preserve NAC, but the work is just getting started. And so we have to talk about what that looks like and activate as to, from March, end of March, almost April now, to June, which is 2 months, what's realistic of us for a timeline to pull people together.
No, I think, thanks for that. I think probably untethering, I think even setting this meeting up was a little confusing from our staff membership too. And so I think untethering from the city operational rules is going to be a good thing as quickly as possible, right? The clarity of minutes and public notice, and not that we're trying to hide the ball necessarily, but it just operationally makes confusion, as Ashley, Catlin, and I have probably been meeting every 2 weeks for the last several months, to try to figure out who's doing what. And so nobody wants to step on each other's toes. We want to allow that freedom of space and that organic work to develop. And so I think this is my just opinion, a resetting, getting untethered, if you will, from the city operations, since the city commission already voted on that, and giving you the clarity. And I'm really excited about this new governance model. This new governance model has, as Dan mentioned, so many opportunities to broaden beyond the city of Fargo, right? When we think about all things government and what government has its hands in, whether it's school district, health, housing, across the metro, there's so many opportunities. And we want the city of Fargo's role and voice in that, but not to be the only role and voice in that. And it's so much about the community voice. And so how best to do that, to put that power where it's at and have the city show up in that space is
Yeah.
great. And so the quicker we could maybe get to that maybe safe space. I can think of a gazillion reasons why people might not want to show up today in this space at this time. And so, it's maybe not a safe space, you know, and so, you know, how can we find a better safe space and community that can help build that community voice deeper?
Awesome. And that, like, if I could just ask one more question, sorry, I had a lot of notes I wrote down. In terms of the city partnership and city commission role, who do we need to have that kind of fine-tuned more of who's going to be the appointed official liaison from the city? And then I have another question of where it says offer communication platforms for announcements and calls to action or meeting times. Sounds like that will be more us-led, community-led. So like I'm thinking our Facebook page that we already have established is a great way. But second, is there still opportunity for the city to still have some advertisement and kind of help us in terms of pairing and collaborating with us to also on your guys' end to make sure it's still a priority for the city that these meetings are advertised throughout the city and that there is going to be someone from the city that shows up and we have that liaison partnership. That was like the two things I wanted to clarify in that section of the draft.
I can certainly speak to it, but John, I don't know if you have some things. I don't want to speak for John necessarily, but I think our, maybe just two things, because I think when I met with the city attorney, there's maybe a couple, as we get into the operational things, it's not super clear, right? And so one is what kind of, breaks apart the city teeth is by untethering from the mayor's appointments. So future appointments, you're not going to necessarily see board members or community members allocated by the mayor like you have today. So we're going to kind of be separating from all that space. So the mayor's role, the future mayor's role would be to allocate, just like they do today, the liaison commissioner. And so, for instance, John is, Commissioner Strand is the liaison to the Housing Authority and the Community Land Trust. And as those mayors take their position, they each do their appointments in different ways in the liaisons, but they tend to, the elected official tends to speak up on the things that they're interested in. And so there's a marrying, if you will, of interests with the mayor's appointment. So I foresee the mayor appointing a liaison commissioner, and then that liaison commissioner becomes your partner in further city operational needs. And then that liaison commissioner has, access to their entire city operation and community operation for networking and liaising between you, community, and others. And since John actually lives that experience, I'll pass that to you.
Well, and when we get going, what will really drive what we do is what's there to be done. What's going on, as an observer, and I'm looking forward to us not falling on our face and actually stepping up and standing up and having a successful new community approach. I really believe that's possible. This is an example of how this is limited, the turnout, the ability to interact, engage the timing, the requirements of laws and all that. And what I'm seeing on the outside is, or not on the outside, but one of the things I'm observing is we have, not everybody, people are aware this change is happening, but nobody quite knows how to fit in. And nobody knows how to get there or to partner. And like a few weeks back, Aaron Starr had reached out and he spoke at the commission. Remember somebody said they'd never heard the word NAC before? Aaron Starr, this athlete, but he'd spoken, then he went to Brandon and they and I wasn't in town, but maybe you were at it, but they had a community engagement center at the Indigenous Association, and I believe 40 people showing up. My sense is what they were talking about is how do we fill this space and what do we all want as a community? And my guess is that's an indicator of more of what's to come is more informal, bringing people in, engaging others. It's not, you might have people for short periods of time and you might have them when they're engaged and then lose them. But I think that's where we're going. Maybe one of our next steps is to re-envision that community meeting. And it's not at noon on a weekday. I think it was a Monday night. And when we had our listening session there, it was a good turnout, you know. But my sense is we'll have people show up, I think, from the Native communities that want to be engaged. But we have to really make space for that too. Mm-hmm. And this isn't an ideal space. You know, I kind of have a really mixed emotion as we do all this. You know, and I think it's really important that where we come out of this is an honoring of our Native people. And I'll go off for a moment, but you know, I have a visual in my mind. I'm not Native, okay? But I have a visual in my mind of these dynamics over years, and maybe some of you have seen that picture when they signed a treaty in Washington, D.C., where a chief from North Dakota was there, and they were signing away lands for a reservoir or something. And that chief was there in this picture weeping. You know, and I just really have that image in my mind. Let's make sure this goes the right direction, that it's not, bear with me, it's not some people telling other people you're not fitting in, and I don't even know how to say this, except let's make sure we really open this up to let people work and have empowerment and have authentic voice, so that the homogenous white community gets to listen clearly and not just have you off on a shelf somewhere. Mm-hmm. I'm being really stupid, but I'm being really frank. I think that the Native values and issues are so critically important to preserve and honor and celebrate and uplift. And we all know that there's moments in the city rules where it gets acknowledged, but it's kind of touched on and left alone. We don't have much of that, and I'm just hoping we set it on fire. Sorry, but.
So going back to operationally then, just so I know next steps for us as we leave this room, because it happens very often that we leave and we come back, we wait for whatever Ashley is going to do, and I hear you too. You also need the support and the help to be able to put these community-driven events on. And like as you were saying, if we do it in the right space, people will be there. Right place, right time. We won't have a problem getting the feedback from the community that we need. We know there's lots to be done in a number of spaces, and that's the role for us to fill. So as we start planning as an informal body, we're waiting for this resolution to be signed off and given the legal stamp to say you are now untethered from the city, correct? And the timeline for that is?
It could be as early as mid-April.
Okay.
Mid to end of April.
And in that time, we're still acting in the capacity of this formal body until that's signed off? Or can we start to engage community and start to work with the school board or wherever we go to start these planning activities?
I think
to
you can
be-
start now,
Okay.
because the city commission made action Monday, March 5th or 6th, to start this development plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Because we're not, if we look at city business, we're not spending money or making policy decisions. and so you're building community, you're building program, you're sleuthing things out. And so we're not making action-oriented things. So, yeah, I would say from the action of March 6th,
We're good to move forward.
yeah, you're free to move forward.
Copy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I know it's super confusing, and I don't think any of us experienced this before. We've never really done this before, so,
Much less opaque now. I can see clearly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah, taking along with that confusion, I just want to make sure that it's very clear that the school board is super interested in working together, no matter what that looks like going forward. So please include us in, the conversation to the extent that that's possible. And we have a similar way of appointing the liaison each year. The president of the school board assigns us committees, and, we state what our interests are, and then that person's there for a year. So I know we would love to continue that relationship too.
Some of the other benefits might be tearing down barriers. It might not matter if somebody lives in the next community or in this community, some of those things, It also occurs to me over the years how many people have applied to be on this commission, have been interviewed or contacted and went through an interview process, and then somebody selected, and we have that whole world of people out there that we should keep them involved. We should keep them, don't let them go. If they're wanting to participate, just because you're appointed doesn't mean that you can't. So there's a whole world of people out there that are left out, but want to be, and there's others right now that want to be. So this is an opening. I say you have permission to go forward right now out into the community, and you already have some sorts of a leadership going out to the community. I wouldn't wait for us. You don't need to notify the public that you're having meetings if it's not an official meeting of the quorum of the body. But if it's a community meeting and there might be a quorum, you can do the official notices that there might be a quorum attending, but
Well, I
don't
think
hold off.
That's what we would have done even before, like when we would have our sub-meetings and we're all engaging with the community and trying to get people on board in between the commission meetings. So that makes sense to me. But it sounds like there's even more flexibility than there was before. So, okay, that's helpful to know.
Yeah, and I think, Emily, you had another question in there about communications and, city platforms. And I think the exciting part about this is, if there's an initiative or a thing, or whatever the item is you're communicating about, we have communication channels through our liaison commissioner, through the appropriate city staff, and through our communications department too. And so I think it's really depending on what the thing is you're trying to communicate about, and then we can reach out to the different channels that we have.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why I bring that up, and please other commission members speak up, how you feel about this, is when, we were talking and getting feedback from some of former, chairmen and chairwomen and members from the NAC, I think the biggest thing was, hey, we still need to hold the city accountable. That's why we still want this commission up and running and being alive, is there is still, we feel like, a duty from the city to play a role in this. And so that was my biggest hesitation with moving forward. And I love this. I love the idea of it being more community-led, more flexibility. That's my jam. That's where creativity happens with things. But I do still like the structure of having the city and holding the city to a certain standard of how you will be involved, and then supporting us with also making sure through your communication channels that you're advertising that, because I think that then shows our Indigenous community that the city still wants to see this alive, and they care about communicating when we're meeting and how we're meeting, and they want to be involved in that. They want to send someone from the school board to come. And so I think, to me, that's just very important, is this city partnership and commission role. What is your end of the duty that you guys still have to hold up with this new kind of initiative? And that's really one of my biggest things. But if other people on here feel like that's not as important, then I'm totally cool with doing what the group wants to do.
My thinking is, and I'll defer, but if you have a liaison who's at the table from the school board and from the city, they're your bridge. And what really has to happen is they need to be, with your partnership, aware of the needs to communicate what their issues are. So for example, like on the school board or on ours, we will say, okay, let's schedule this, let's get this before the city commission, let's get it on the agenda, let's formalize the approach and have it come to us. But we don't do much of that now. We haven't come to the city commission very many times. You know, but in my mind, that's where it goes. You have somebody that helps you navigate that system out there when there's something like a Savannah's Day or a murdered and missing Indigenous women and people's issues surfacing, or, you know, things that are important that are happening. And who knows, one will surface tomorrow. Shane Netterville type things. You know, but we need to be able to rally and get a voice. And I'll say this, you have an absolute right to get to the commission bodies. And you don't need a liaison to ask to get on an agenda. You can, but that's where I'll say, let's put this on agenda, let's schedule this, or whoever your liaison is.
Yeah,
I would
that-
say, sorry, Emily, I would say to add to that, it kind of frees it up, if you will. So if you think about you having, you know, especially Ashley in her world on past chairs, had to like funnel through the planning department to funnel to the city commission, and we're doing that with all 19 boards and commissions. Now, if you take that away, you now have a direct link to get on the agenda, a direct link to make that request and call, and we as staff don't have to treat everybody the same. And so we can prioritize initiatives or communications or needs, just like, again, like some of our other affiliated groups, and making direct presentations to city commission. So the liaison commissioner is really your direct link to all city operations, instead of having to go through city staff, if you will.
No, that's helpful. Thank you for explaining that. And it sounds like from what I'm hearing from you guys and also you, is that like you want to be a part of our community-led meetings and you want to show up and you want to make sure you're playing a role and playing a part and having some responsibility in terms of like where we go with the city, or when we need the city's, you know, support with something, or we need to, you know, tell the city something that's going on, right? X, Y, or Z. So that is just my biggest thing, is making sure that gets really flushed out in the document. And I just like specifics on that. So that's what I would like to see. So there's not anything that's kind of left for interpretation, if that makes sense. Like I'd want that part flushed out a little better.
Native people don't like signing documents, but please put this into writing specifically. I
Yeah.
think I agree with Emily. I think that starting out this process, it was, there's a grief, right? I think there's been for me anyway, I won't speak for everyone, I've been, was not the way I wanted to start 2026. You know, I was like, this year is going to be all these things, and it just woke up and found out, okay, we're potentially not going to exist anymore as a formal NAC. And so that's a lot of processing of what does that look like, and grieving. But I do think that this plan, if done appropriately, like it combines the best of two things, which is what we're hoping to do, is like shift to be community owned and to really not have our voices be funneled or silenced or filtered, or because I know a lot of NAC members, past, present, current, very strong advocates, very, very aligned with community, embedded in community. And we've talked about this space not allowing for that organic, authentic advocacy that we'd really like it to be. And so I really believe that we can continue that, but also what does that look like, and how does that resolution kind of lay, I don't know if it's in the resolution or in a, you know, what document that is, but lining that out a little bit more clearly, like the city will appoint the official liaison, provide that space, communication platforms, collaborate. And I think having that space at the table for the meetings, if able to, I think that would be really important to continue that. And I don't, like, really have not wanted to lose that throughout this whole planning process, like that city governance, federal, state, local, like there's an obligation to take care of our Native community. And I wanted to make sure that that stayed consistent no matter what happens with the Native American Commission, which this plan, from my perspective, I think really combines the best of both worlds, but it is, it's been a grieving and it will be, but it's also exciting to look at what could it look like. And to John's point of, when I think I've heard a few people talk about it, we've been very reactive. I think Native people and communities, like we are always under stress and trauma and different events, and there's different life factors, and we have all of the different things, but like, I'm thinking preventative, like how do we as a NAC and as community, as we're developing this new community-led voluntary commission, and we're hearing and we're having consistent, open, trusting relationships with community without this governance structure, how do we switch to being more preventative? How do our efforts get more into not reacting because we're hearing about what happened with a shooting, or because we're reacting because this XYZ happened, but how do we shift into where do we get to thriving as a Native community? You know, what will that take? And who needs to be at the table? City of Moorhead, West Fargo, you know, we've had kind of some limitations to who we could partner with, but I think in this structure, we'll be able to expand those out and hopefully be a little bit more shifting out of survival and looking at how do we expand this and get our communities thriving here. Which isn't just on Native American Commission, but I mean, we can build those partnerships to do that. Because we'll need it to be able to do the work.
To tag along, and boy, you do a great job as a chair, by the way, and as a leader, just so you know. But this notion, you mentioned West Fargo, it's exactly right. You know, it's not just the city of Fargo anymore, and we have the relationship with the schools, but that's Fargo schools, then we have West Fargo schools, and we have the Park District, and then we have Moorhead, and then we have Cass County and Clay County, and we have North Dakota, Minnesota. The reach might vary all the time relative to what the issue is. I remember years ago, there was a Native family or a group of people that were having trouble being respected on a golf course. That's 20 years ago, probably. The way they were treated on a public golf course in Fargo became a community issue. And so we have to have relationships with the Park District too, and with everybody when it's needed. You know, so when the moment comes to advocate, we're not limited, and we try to have a connection and access to those entities as circumstances direct. You know, but there are moments that we'll have to go beyond our comfort zone, and we need that bridge of people across the communities. You all have, what are there, 5 tribes locally? I don't know if we, you know, but, and I don't know the boundaries, but the sooner boundaries are gone, the better, as far as barriers go in advocacy. I'll stop.
Yeah, I know we're looking at time here. I want to make sure to be cognizant of our time and keeping us, are there other discussion items for the working plan, transition plan, anything that we want to clarify, feedback?
I do have another question, actually. With where it says that we will still, where is it at? Continue to fund supported funds for the Indigenous Association. Is that going to be able to be flushed out in the resolutions document of like what the amount, that kind of more the funding piece?
Yeah, that is, so the resolution document, I don't want to put that much weight in it. So the resolution document has, it's not a agreement, if you will. It's a dissolve, you know, for lack of a better word, dissolving the Native American Commission as it's tethered to governance with the intentions pulled from here. Like the specifics of like what we would consider more of an agreement or contract would not belong in a resolution. That would belong more in a working memo or some sort of informal documentation. So we don't want to tie the city commission's, future city commissioners' hands or your hands. But what I would say, the intention of that bullet in particular is, this is good to say on a microphone, the Indigenous Association and the support funding that goes with it is a standalone budget item in the city budget.
Okay.
And so if I were to forecast to 2027 budget process, which begins next month, that's going to be a topic. And if it's something you believe in, it's going to need supportive communications for. And so I think, again, just like we're trying to untether from the mayor, we're also trying to untether from the budget process so that the budget process stands alone and the associated advocacy that's needed for different budget items works through that system. That might have been a bunch of governance speak, so.
No,
let
I
me
think
know.
I understand. I think, and that's my piece is like before this dissolvement happens, like I would like, I mean, I don't know about how you guys feel, but I'd like to see some memo or something in writing about what's the plan moving forward with this. Otherwise, like,
I think it's on its own, honestly, and so,
then who will hold, so how I viewed it as the Native American Commission, it was kind of the hosts at making sure we were being good stewards of where's that, like, that money is continuing to go every year, right? So like who then is going to be if the commission is being dissolved, then who is going to be responsible for that at the city level of managing all
well, I
of
think
that?
your liaison commissioner.
Okay.
And as well as you all as advocates
Yep.
in the community,
But I'm more curious about who at the city level is going to be.
the liaison
Okay.
commissioner. And I will certainly, as a planning staff, do my part, but my hands are kind of tied. And so it's really
Right.
it's the 5 elected officials and the advocacy just direct to the 5 elected officials. And of course, the IA's advocacy. Is that a fair statement?
So IA is up for, they're still talking about the funding? Is this? am
I think anything in the budget right now is up for grabs.
So when you say that we have to communicate with the city, do you mean by going to the city commission meetings and speaking? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
At this point, that request is continuing forward. And who knows what'll happen with the June election and who will be there or not. There's even one Native American candidate, so you never know what'll happen, who will be there. But it's all up in the air right now.
Yeah. And as it, like, I get it's all up in the air. I think that in the meantime, like, if we dissolve before this is all up in the air, who's going to be, like, that's just, I want to flesh
Who's
out,
holding
like,
the bag?
Who's holding it? And then we need to know who that is, and I preferably would like something in writing on that. That's how I operate. So I don't know if people feel that way, if it's just more of like, this is on good word, that this is going to continue until all that happens, but.
I think Nicole and I should visit with this administratively, because there was conversation about contracting the Indigenous Association to do some carrying forward, but I don't know where that landed.
Yeah.
Where that money would turn into a formal MOU of some sort, memorandum. So it's formalized a little more, but we should revisit that immediately.
Yes, yeah, I think that was the other thing, was that piece was big for me, as just being, I serve on the board too of the Indigenous Association, so that I know is a
I
big
think that's in
concern from
lieu
them.
of this. You know, I mean, just to be direct. And so one of the greatest things so I've been staffing the Native American Commission for 15 years. And I think one of the greatest strengths this proposal has, or this development plan has, is that you will not be a nonprofit and that you will not replace services and programs. And so I see one of the strengths of this group being, I would call it government navigators. And I'm looking at Daniel because you get it. You know, if you work in government, it's a navigation nightmare. And you need
I'm learning that.
you need spokespeople and navigators to lead through, to find peace, to get the thing done and to get the policy made. And it's everybody's responsibility, not whether it's written or not written. It's everybody's responsibility to make government work for them. And so one of the reasons I like this bullet point about the Indigenous Association is because I've heard past conversation, because of the confusion tied to the sweat lodge, that Native American commissioners felt that money was owed to them. and as a Native American commission to reprogram that work to somewhere else. We untethered the Sweat Lodge funds and the Native American Commission funds to support the IAA way back when, that you guys were all part of, 8 years ago or so. And so that break has happened in the budget process and now stands on its own, and which I think is a great thing, because it doesn't get marred with government issues. And we very much need all the above.
I think that's a great clarification point too, because I think there's still misconception about
Right.
NAC kind of being the holder of the funds for IA when we're not even connected to it at this point. But I think Brandon, Executive Director Brandon Beatty of the IA Indigenous Association was able to review our plan, and we met with him, and he reviewed language and to make sure it felt good from IA's perspective and from his perspective. And he had some edits for us, but I think it was important to continue that as a bullet because we did, at one point, that funding was under us. And so I think it was important to continue to say, like, that's our stance, that we will continue to ask for documentation, for advocacy to make sure that that funding remains
And maybe,
consistent.
and I knew that it was separate from us, like, so I apologize if that was confusing in my original comment. I think for me, it was just making sure I knew if we're gonna dissolve, then who is the steward of that? Who is responsible for, that? Because that's how I kind of felt, like, even though we weren't holding it, we were being good stewards of it to make sure we were communicating with AI, what's being done with it at the city level. Oh, it's still in the budget, okay. If we're not a commission anymore, then we can't do that. So that's why I wanted to come from the city level, like from the official city level. So I wanted to clarify it would be the liaison commissioner that's appointed then. Okay.
We also had a moment where they were funding the funding streams where there was the powwows, the Sweat Lodge, and then the powwow, and then the Indigenous Association. So that money stream has kind of shifted to moment priorities changing. And more recently, it was the Indigenous Association because the Wesley Center had closed and you didn't, but that's, I think, where it kind of landed. And I would expect and hope that the support will always be there as much as possible for the efforts that come to us from the community.
Well, and I know we've got a couple minutes here left for our time together, but I really, Miigwech, thank you for talking and discussing clarifying the action plan. I think that continuing to adapt, continuing to ask the questions, continuing to figure out what this plan looks like and how it will best serve our community. I think that's hopefully our goal to keep going forward. Native American Commission 20 year, I think just have it on your radar. I don't have a plan or anything for that as chair, but it is coming up in June. And I think it would be really important this year more than ever with our transition to highlight, celebrate, come together, lift up our voices together, lift up the community. So just putting that on your radar to if we want to have a planning committee for that or figure out what that could look like. Because I do think it will be a year to celebrate our transition. So I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. And then public comment, I don't think we have anybody signed up for that. So that was item number 5 on the agenda. And then the other thing I'll just note is that Saturday is the Woodlands High Plains Powwow as well. Most folks know that, but I just want to publicly state that 1 o'clock and 7 p.m. are grand entry times. Hope to see everybody there. And then with that, I don't know if we want to staff and liaison reports if we have any additional.
No, just as next steps, I'll work with Ashley as we get the resolution draft created. And I think the comments here today were really helpful. We can get some, general, see if we can capture those comments. And we'll send that out for your review and then let you know when that timing works right for getting scheduled to the City Commission.
All right, any other business before we adjourn? Nope, hearing none. This meeting of the Native American Commission stands adjourned. Miigwech, thank you.